Mercy TV, Wednesday night.
Hello, welcome to the Mercy Weekly Meeting. It happens every Wednesday here at 1745 Capitol Street Northeast, just behind the Graber Insurance Building, every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Come on down to find out more information about getting your card, finding and getting some medicine now in the short term, and in the long term, finding a grower or getting to grow yourself. Also, information on best methods on medicating and changes, whether you need to make a change or changes that are happening to the program. Normally, we query the audience to see what issues are happening, but we don't have much of a speaking audience here tonight.
Just myself.
We have the Peanut Gallery. So what questions and comments do you have, Peanut Gallery?
How was the Hemp Fest for this last weekend?
Well, that's a good question. The Emerald Empire Hemp Fest happens in Eugene every year on the third weekend in July. This year, 2013, the Hemp Fest happened Friday, July 19th, Saturday the 20th, and the 21st. Typically it runs from high noon till 10 o'clock on Fridays, 10 in the morning till 10 in the evening on a Saturday, and then 10 in the morning till 8 in the evening on Sundays. It had a couple of thousand people overall during the whole course of the weekend. There was a number of bands participating, a number of groups giving out information, some there with resources and the like. And overall, I think it was a pretty good event. We look forward to building on it and making next year even bigger and better. So folks should stay tuned to mercycenters.org for all the information about the Emerald Empire Hemp Fest. Also, you can visit w-v-normal.org for information about HempFest and Eugene in general. Yeah.
Sometime soon, there'll be broadcasts of all the bands that played on CCTV.
Yes, that's true. Stay tuned here to Channel 23, and we'll be having video and music from the HempFest out here for you to see. We want to let folks know what happened there. It was a lot of fun, a lot of good music, good food, and good people there, networking on the issue, and just enjoying the sunshine and good atmosphere in general. So stay tuned here at 23 for highlights of the Emerald Empire Hemp Fest, which happens in Eugene, Oregon.
Thank you.
So, if you would like to get your card, contact Mercy, the Medical Cannabis Resource Center, here at 1745 Capitol Street Northeast. We're open Monday through Friday, noon to 6, and we also have a phone. It's 503-363-4588, and of course our website, mercycenters.org. Ask a question, give us a comment, curse, kudo. Let us know how we're doing. Or if you need some information relative to one of the issues for the medical cannabis, I will certainly try to help you out. We have some news. Of course, we should just go read it off the... Of course, this information is available from the Willamette Valley Normal website. You can get your newsletters there. Also get your information from the Willamette Valley Normal There you'll find articles like Mayors nationwide urge feds to stop interfering in states' marijuana laws. Attendees at the 81st Annual United States Conference of Mayors in Las Vegas, Nevada, voted this week in favor of a resolution urging the federal government to stop interfering in the affairs of states that have legalized the use of cannabis. Mayors from some 200 U.S. cities nationwide participated in the vote. The measure resolves states and localities should be able to set whatever marijuana policies work best to improve the public safety and health of their communities, and calls for amending the Federal Controlled Substances Act to explicitly allow states to set their own marijuana policies without federal interference. It further calls on the Obama administration to re-examine the priorities of federal agencies to prevent the expenditure of resources on actions that undermine the duly enacted marijuana laws of states. Mayors Bob Filner, San Diego, California; Mike McGinn, Seattle, Washington; Gene Kwan, Oakland, California; Steve Hogan, Aurora, Colorado; Marilyn Strickland, Tacoma, Washington; Tom Bates of Berkeley, California; Stephen Cassidy of San Leandro, California; and Matthew Ryan of Binghamton, New York, submitted the resolution, which was approved unanimously. The U.S. Conference of Mayors had previously adopted a resolution at its 75th annual meeting declaring the war on drugs a failure and calling for a health-centered reorientation of drug policy that provides cities, counties, and states the flexibility they need to find the most effective way to deal with the drug control. In Hawaii, governor signs measures amending state's medical cannabis program. Democrat Governor Neil Abercrombie this week signed two separate measures into law to amend the state's 13-year-old medical marijuana program. House Bill 668 transfers the administration of the state's medical cannabis program from the Department of Public Safety to the Department of Public Health. Senate Bill 642 increases the quantity of medical cannabis that may be possessed by patients from 3 ounces to 4 ounces. The measure also increases the total number of mature plants that may be legally grown by qualified patients at any one time from 3 to 7. Some 11,000 Hawaiians are registered in the state's medical marijuana program. The changes in law become effective January 2015. In New Hampshire, lawmakers sign off on revised medical marijuana statute. Members of the House and Senate on Wednesday gave final approval to a revised version of House Bill 573, which establishes a regulated system of medical cannabis distribution in New Hampshire. The amended bill, which lawmakers passed by 284 to 66 vote, creates 4 state-sanctioned marijuana dispensing facilities to produce and distribute cannabis to state-qualified patients who possess a physician's recommendation. Patients diagnosed with one of approximately 20 qualifying conditions, including cancer, hepatitis C, muscular dystrophy, Crohn's disease, or multiple sclerosis, would be permitted to legally possess up to 2 ounces of cannabis. Under the proposed law, patients must obtain cannabis only from a state-licensed facility. Qualified patients will not be provided with any legal protections to possess or use cannabis prior to the establishment of such facilities. As originally passed by the House, the measure allowed qualifying patients the option to grow their own cannabis. The measure also allowed physicians to recommend cannabis for the treatment of post-traumatic stress. Both provisions were stripped from the bill by the Senate at the request of Democratic Governor Maggie Hassan. Governor Hassan has publicly stated that she will sign the reconciled version of the HB 573 into law. New Hampshire will become the 19th state to allow for the limited legal use of medical cannabis. So, there you go. Hopefully, New Hampshire will join the ranks. In Nevada, the governor authorizes creation of medical cannabis dispensaries. In Colorado, the governor signs law regulating commercial hemp production. And several other things are happening there. Certainly don't want to try to read through here, pick out the best story for you folks. Let's take a look at Nevada. Governor authorizes creation of medical cannabis dispensaries. Republican Governor Brian Sandoval has signed legislation, Senate Bill 374, authorizing for the creation of up to 66 medical marijuana production and distribution facilities. Under the new law, state regulators will oversee the creation of licensed establishments to produce, test, and dispense cannabis and cannabis-infused products to authorized patients. Nevada voters enacted a state constitutional amendment in 2000, mandating state lawmakers to allow for physicians to authorize qualified patients to consume and grow cannabis. However, that law did not provide for facilities where patients may obtain medical cannabis. Approximately 3,800 Nevadans are presently authorized to grow and or consume cannabis under state law. Senate Bill 374 imposes limits on the home cultivation of cannabis if patients reside within 25 miles of an operating dispensary. However, patients who are cultivating specific strains of cannabis not provided by a local dispensary may continue to engage in the home cultivation of such strains. Patients who have an established history of cultivating medical cannabis prior to July 1, 2013, may also continue to do so until March 31st, 2016. The bill also amends possession limits from 1 ounce to 2 1/2 ounces and increases plant cultivation limits from 3 mature plants to 12. Medical marijuana products dispensed by state licensed facilities will be subject to standard state sales taxes as well as a 4% excise tax, of which 75% will be directed to education and 25% will be directed toward implementing and enforcing the regulation. Arizona, Colorado, New Jersey, Maine, New Mexico, and Rhode Island have state licensed medical cannabis dispensaries up and running. Similar dispensing outlets are in the process of opening in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Washington, D.C. So, I guess we'll see what happens with that. Just give me a second here, folks. Something I want to look up here. Alrighty then. The 2013 Oregon Cannabis Law Reform Session. Let's give you an update on that, folks. First and foremost, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, has been added to the Oregon medical marijuana program. Compassionate Oregon's SB 281 passed, which adds PTSD to the OMMP. The law becomes effective 1st of January 2014. However, if patients apply before then, they and their grower and caregiver are protected until the application is denied officially. So as long as they possess the application and proof of mailing, are within limits, and don't do the things which cause one to lose the protection of the OMA, they should be okay. Additionally, simply having an attending physician statement and being within the limits, etc., creates an affirmative defense which one can use in court. Oregon is the 8th state to recognize PTSD as a qualifying condition for the therapeutic use of medical cannabis. MCS and PCS rescheduling and misdemeanor marijuana and hashish charges. Senate Bill 40 passed both chambers and was signed by the governor. It has an emergency clause, so it's effective upon signage. The OCDLA proposed reducing unlawful manufacturing of marijuana from an A felony to a B felony, and reducing possession from a B felony to a C felony. To conform with marijuana having been rescheduled from a Schedule I to a Schedule II controlled substance. One collateral effect of this is to make manufacturing expungible, although there is a 20-year wait. See ORS space 135225. Or the Mercy News section. Compassionate Oregon proposed a misdemeanor provision where, between current violation and felony treatment of marijuana possession, SB 40 makes possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana a Class B violation, reducing the fine to a maximum of $650. Makes possession of more than 1 ounce and less. Makes possession of more than 1 ounce and less than 4 ounces a Class B misdemeanor, and therefore, and more than 4 ounces a felony, now Class C. Prior law submitted less than an ounce to exclude hashish, so that any amount of hashish was a felony. Senate bill makes any amount clear under 1/4 of an ounce of hashish or hash oil or honey oil or other extracts. A Class B misdemeanor or any amount over 1/4 of an ounce is a Class C felony. Wow, that was there for that part. That was quite interesting. Oregon is the 35th state to have misdemeanor marijuana and the 8th state to have misdemeanor hashish. A third item was our, quote, no more driver's license suspension for a conviction of marijuana less than an ounce, unquote, act. Senate Bill 82 passed over through both chambers and was signed by the governor. It too has an emergency clause, so it will be effective once signed. The Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association proposed removing the mandatory with a substantial reason not to safe harbor, a 6 months driver's license suspension for conviction of violation of less than 1 ounce of marijuana. After the Senate approved this change, the House continued to require suspensions of those under 18. However, it was also required there be a showing and judicial findings that the suspension is necessary for the protection of the public. The Senate concurred with this amendment. Under Senate Bill 82, the driver's licenses of nearly 5,000 Oregonians a year will no longer be suspended for a conviction for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. Under Senate Bill 40, Oregonians will no longer face B felony charges for possession of small amounts of marijuana. By adding misdemeanor provisions to the law and the restriction of other fines and penalties relating to marijuana, resulting from a 2010 reclassification of marijuana by the Oregon State Board of Pharmacy from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2 controlled substance. In addition, Senate Bill 40 will save the state nearly $3 million over the first biennium and nearly $5 million after that. Senate Bill 82, while not having an official fiscal impact statement, will save the state the expense of sending out notices of suspension. Both bills again received bipartisan support, and we look forward to the governor's signature that actually already has signed both on bills. Creating a regulated medical supply system. There was lobbying done primarily by the Sugarman Group, Jeff Sugarman and Sam Chapman, on HB 3460. House Bill 3460 passed the House and is pending a Senate vote, and the governor's signature both respect. Yes, it's both. It's actually passed the House and the Senate, is awaiting a governor's signature. 3460 adds a fourth cardholder to the OMMA's Registry Identification Cardholder System, and this cardholder entity is referred to as a medical marijuana facility. It permits patients who own all produced medicine to authorize their grower to sell or be fully reimbursed for any excess medicine produced in excess of the patient's need to any medical marijuana facility, which in turn can sell or be fully reimbursed by any licensed patient or caregiver. There are many restrictions on facilities, including siting more than 1,000 feet from a school or other facility, and the OHA is authorized to promulgate rules regarding them, which authority they are expected to exercise. The effective date is March 1st, 2014. However, Section 9, parentheses 3, creates an administrative defense for facilitating facilities which are otherwise in compliance with the provisions of the law. At the very least, this bill creates questions about the continuing viability of prosecutions in Malheur, Jackson, and Lane and unindicted cases in Washington County.
Excuse me?
Hmm.
Will any of these bills have any effect on the people that were recently busted in the southern state?
There was hope that this would indeed affect the raids that have occurred here. In fact, over the past year, High Hopes Farms, the Greener Side, Southern Oregon Normal, and other places down there in Southern Oregon. Just last week, however, there was a statement by prosecuting attorneys that they were going to continue their prosecutions. And we need citizens to write letters to the editor and protest the continued prosecution of folks who have attempted to do some facilities have been busted during this time. Our steak?
Yes, rare, medium, or done. How do you prefer it?
I'm a rare steak kind of guy. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay.
We having steaks tonight?
Steaks tonight, bro.
So
Will Ellen, our Attorney General, be any help in curbing these other people?
these prosecutions,
Yeah.
no, she really can't affect prosecutions that way. She just says what the law is and so forth. She can do a prosecution if it's a case worthy, but she can't halt a prosecution and tell them not to do it. That's kind of their jurisdiction, I guess. Creating a regulated medical supply system. Lobbied primarily by the Sugarman Group, which was Jeff Sugarman and Sam Chapman, HB 3460 has passed the House and is pending a Senate vote and the governor's signature, both of which are expected. 3460 adds a fourth cardholder to the OMMA's Registry Identification Cardholder System called a medical marijuana facility. It permits patients who own all produced medicine to authorize their grower to sell or be fully reimbursed for any excess or medicine produced in excess of the patient's need to any medical marijuana facility, which in turn can sell or be fully reimbursed by any licensed patient or caregiver. That was definitely written by an attorney. There are many restrictions on facilities, including siting, i.e. more than 1,000 feet from a school or other facility, and the OHA is authorized to promulgate rules regarding them, which authority they are expected to exercise. And we should let folks know that there's an ACMM special meeting, that's the Advisory Committee on Medical Marijuana. There's a special meeting happening Monday up in Portland to discuss this, and we'll do our best to make it available for folks. So tune in here to mercycenters.org for more information about House Bill 3460 and the ACMM's response to it. The effective date is March 1st, 2014. However, Section 9, parentheses 3, creates an affirmative defense for facilities which are otherwise in compliance with the provisions of this law. So I suppose that folks that start up from this point would be covered by this provision, even though the law is not technically in effect. But some of the prohibitionists have vowed to go on with the cases. And what we need to do in response to that is write letters to the editor and otherwise let people know that this waste is going on, get a protest going on. We should try to get those district attorneys and judges who are involved in this action fired, and then we can move on and use cannabis like we should be able to. In addition, we want to get rid of the legislators, particularly those who did stuff like vote no on Senate Bill 281, which is to add PTSD. And as PK mentioned earlier, at the very least, this bill creates questions about the continuing viability of prosecutions in Malheur, Jackson, Lane, and unindicted cases in Washington counties. Indeed, this should affect all the way back to the High Hopes farm of a year ago. Another thing that folks can do is be prepared to serve on the juries which may be hearing these cases. And from that standpoint, it'd be nice to see a jury mutiny for these folks. That's where the jury, during the voir dire process, expresses your opinion that you think that this is a waste of taxpayer dollars to prosecute them, and to let the prosecuting attorney know that you intend to vote not guilty even if the state proves its case, as it were. This is jury nullification, and this is what individuals like yourself can do to help these folks caught up in this pot war. Limiting presumptive prison for pot. The Governor's Commission on Public Safety, which is Bill HB 3194, emerged from the Governor's office significantly gutted, including the removal of some restrictions on the mandatory minimums for BM 11 cases. That's ballot measure 11. For marijuana, however, some limited sentencing modifications remain. The bill has passed the House and was passed the Senate and has already been signed by the Governor. Essentially, the sentencing changes are these. Although the unlawful possession, delivery, or manufacture of marijuana can still be prosecuted as a, quote, commercial drug offense, the possession factors, i.e. more than 110 grams of marijuana or more than 8 grams of hashish, are repealed. Additionally, the unlawful possession, delivery, or manufacture of the marijuana can no longer be prosecuted with the sentencing designation of substantial quantities, as those provisions are repealed as well. These changes leave only within 1,000 feet of a school and delivery to a minor as presumptive prison sentences upon conviction, as both remain level 8 offenses.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I know there's not too many minors on the program, but there is a couple are card holders. Would that give it a little difference on that one?
No, this is referring to folks that were charged with possession or delivery or something of that nature, which would mean that they were not protected by OMA and therefore got charged with those.
I'm sorry.
So, or in the presence of a minor or so forth and all. So,
All right.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
the minors as card holders is would be another issue. Yeah, kind of thing. Bills which will die this session. 2 bills which had hearings but were not voted on in either chamber are Senate Bill 794 and House Bill 3371. Senate Bill 794 would have provided modest OMA reform by allowing reciprocity up to an ounce and by ending the requirement that patients designate grow sites even when they have no intention of growing. Law enforcement had significant unaddressed concerns with the OMA, which may come back in an omnibus OMA bill the short session in February 2014, kind of like Senate Bill 1085 did in 2005. House Bill 3371, a well-funded and well-drafted comprehensive tax and regulate effort, remains hopeful for a referral to the November 2014 general election from the February 2014 session, especially if the tax provision can be amended to make sure we would have a viable infused products industry. The current proposal calls for a tax on the producers by weight, which raises concerns about the cost-effectiveness of marketing leaves lower than quality plant products used for edible cannabis-infused products. Signature gathering efforts on a constitutional amendment and a revised tax and regulate proposal, both of which were vetted during the 2012 campaign, are also underway. All in all, this was an epic session during an exciting transitional time. We would like to thank Leland Berger, attorney, Portland, Oregon, for the information, and Compassionate Oregon, especially their man in the field, Anthony Taylor, for their work this session. P.S. For those interested in contributing to the Compassionate Oregon PAC, the address is Compassionate Oregon, 1510 Southwest Friendly Court, McMinnville, Oregon, 97128. Meanwhile, Colorado governor signs legislation authorizing retail cannabis productions and sales. Some good news. The Michigan Supreme Court rules that Medical Marijuana Act exempts patients from zero tolerance per se driving laws. So good thing there. Also in Colorado, the governor signs law regulating commercial hemp production. Governor John Hickenlooper signed legislation into law creating a new program within the Department of Agriculture to oversee the regulation of commercial hemp production. Hemp is a distinct variety of the plant species Cannabis sativa, that contains only minute, less than 1% amounts of tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, the primary psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. Senate Bill 241 classifies cannabis possessing no more than 0.3% of THC as an agricultural commodity and establishes a 9-member committee within the State Department of Agriculture to oversee the creation of regulations governing the licensed cultivation of hemp for commercial and research purposes. The department must adopt regulations for the new program no later than March 1st, 2014. Unlike similar laws enacted in other states, like Oregon, Senate Bill 241 does not mandate farmers seeking state-issued hemp cultivation licenses to first gain federal approval. The U.S. Controlled Substances Act makes no federal legal distinction between marijuana and industrial hemp. Federal legislation, the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2013, to amend the Controlled Substances Act to exclude industrial hemp from the definition of marijuana, is currently pending before Congress. So contact your legislator and tell them yes on hemp. Drug Enforcement Agency seizes 11 bitcoins from alleged Silk Road dealer. The Drug Enforcement Agency has seized 11.02 bitcoins worth approximately $814.22 from an accused drug dealer in South Carolina, according to a government press release spotted by Bitcoin bloggers. It is the first known instance of the government seizing the virtual currency as if it were property or cash. The DEA arrested Eric Daniel Hughes on April 12, 2013. One Bitcoin sleuth traced the username Casey Jones to the user Truckin' on the underground drug bazaar Silk Road, where he appears to have been an active buyer and seller. His posts refer to pharmaceutical drugs such as Adderall, Dexedrine, Vyvanse, Klonopin, Clozapam, and Suboxone. One user claims to have bought from Casey Jones and says he was trustworthy but a bit careless. User Dealer of Drugs wrote on the Silk Road forum, "The crazy thing is, he messaged me from his vendor account and willingly gave me his entire personal address, not a drop address. I myself warned Casey at the time to be careful, because anyone at any time could blackmail him, and he pretty much dismissed the idea and said, no problem, I start an alternate buyer account to start buying. I'm not worried about it." It's unclear whether the agency seized the bitcoins in a sting operation or through some other means. It's possible that the DEA set up a seller account and got Hughes' address under the pretense of sending him a purchase. However, it's also possible that the DEA seized the computer with the file containing the bitcoins or got Hughes to hand them over. So far, the Silk Road has managed to facilitate criminal transactions while giving its users a fairly comfortable degree of impunity thanks to the security of Bitcoin and the fact that users must connect to it through the anonymizing Tor network. However, the DEA has said publicly that it was investigating Silk Road, and users are always wary of what feels like an inevitable crackdown. This bust doesn't necessarily mean the DEA is cracking down on Silk Road. It's possible that Hughes ran afoul of the agency entirely offline, but it does show that the agency is increasingly aware of the importance of the virtual side of the drug business. On a sad note, and why we need to end the drug war, in mistaken house search, SWAT team rummages through Iraq veteran's house and shoots his dog. Another raid on the wrong residence, another dead dog. This time, Iraq War veteran Adam Arroyo says he came home on Monday to find his door busted down and his beloved pup dead from bullet wounds. The Buffalo, New York police did not seem too concerned with cleaning up blood or anything like that, but nonetheless left behind a note of sorts, a search warrant for the apartment next door. They busted the door down with a battering ram or whatever, he told the Buffalo News. They came in, and with a few seconds of entering the apartment, they murdered my dog. They shot her multiple times. They had no reason to do that, Arroyo says. His dog, a 2.5-year-old pit bull named Cindy, was killed while chained up in the kitchen, which he discovered ridden with bullet holes. Also, another cannabis prohibition-related death in North Carolina, with police using children in drug stings. Right, we told you about the Nevada legislators approved measure to allow for medical cannabis dispensing operations. We told you guys about that. Yeah. Illinois, and who was it? Vermont already has the law. Yeah, I'm on Vermont. Arizona has a law. Washington State. Yeah, man. But Illinois has a medical cannabis law. And Mundelein readies for medical marijuana proposal, for example. Mundelein preparing to regulate medical marijuana should Governor Pat Quinn endorse a bill legalizing its use. We're just trying to stay ahead of it as much as possible, said Police Chief Eric Gunther. If Quinn signs the bill into law, the village's Planning and Zoning Commission would conduct a public hearing. Suburbs across Lake County have adopted similar procedures. The Lake County Municipal League is scheduled to review the issue in Gurnee Thursday, July 18. It seems to be a pretty standard response, Gunther said. Really, the only opportunity to have any input is to control the zoning and where the facilities are located. The village's Planning and Zoning Commission would recommend the most appropriate locations for marijuana dispensaries and other growing operations. Another consideration is whether the village would require special use permits for such facilities. Village trustees would get the final say on restrictions. Vernon Hills does not anticipate taking those steps before Quinn reaches a decision, Assistant Village Manager John Kalmar said. In Libertyville, trustees notified its zoning panel earlier this year to set up a public hearing if Quinn backs the bill. Supporters say medical marijuana alleviates pain and other symptoms of serious illnesses. Critics want additional safeguards to prevent those without medical needs from accessing the drug. Lake County chiefs have expressed concerns, Gunther said. The bill would allow patients who have certain illnesses to buy up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana every 14 days. Patients would be at least 18 years old. Gunther estimates the proposed amount equates to roughly 180 joints. Assuming patients use 3 a day over 2 weeks, it still leaves them over 130 plus, he said. Where does that go? Village Administrator John Lobato and staff has not seen any interest from potential dispensary owners. To my knowledge, we have not been approached by anybody about that, he said. Quinn's signature would make Illinois the 20th state in the country to legalize medical marijuana. The governor has said he's open-minded about the measure. It's sad to see those, that the first thing is to spread more propaganda. Wow, that's a tremendous amount. What kind of pinners are they rolling for his joint estimates there.
They, I hope they're the size as what Sunny rolls.
So that's Illinois, and they're going to hopefully get it right and all that fun stuff.
Do you know anything about Washington? Did they figure out how they're going to handle the new law?
I don't know that. I mean, there's a commission formed. They've promulgated some rules. I don't know that. I mean, what everybody's waiting for is when's the dispensaries going. When's the pot going to be made available to folks, cannabis. And there's no delivery date on that. There's no due date. So until that can be guesstimated, they're still putzing around with it.
And that's probably the same with Colorado, huh?
Colorado seems to be moving ahead and implementing things and doing things and not trying to base it on what they think the feds are going to do, like Washington State is. Let's run over to the Washington State news. So here's a couple of titles from the news section. Marijuana's legal, but what about hash? An LTE. Watchdog group on effect of pot on teens. Legal pot prompts a question. What about hash? Again. And Rainier considers marijuana ordinance. So some places are like in Illinois, places are moving to set up their own restrictions to attempt to control the medical or the marijuana recreational marijuana facilities in Washington State. And here we've got also mental illness linked to pot use. So of course, here on the 10th of July, state issues new version of pot rules. And then here, July 11, marijuana hearings scheduled across state. So they put out their rules, they'll get feedback from them, and probably go back and do some more tinkering. Again, mostly because they don't want to make a decision. To a degree, I think.
So they're passing to the next section of legislation to make a decision or a ruling.
I don't think so. I think they're going to put forth something half-assed as it is, and other folks will have to come back and fix it. If the feds don't come in and put an injunction on it, and maybe that's the plan. The prohibitionists are still in charge, just like they are here in Oregon. So maybe they're trying to put something forth that will be so onerous that the feds will come in and put an injunction on it. In fact, the whole program, and that's their way of closing it down, making sure it doesn't happen. I don't know. We hope the citizens of Washington State and anybody can have an effect in Washington, what's happening there. We'll keep an eye on it, keep folks appraised, and keep active. We haven't heard anything about Alaska. California's been pretty quiet. Connecticut was the 17th state. And they've got headlines like, where is the medical marijuana program? Decision delayed on West Haven Pot Farm. Middleton Council to consider lease to medical marijuana. Huh. On the 13th of July, in a letter to the editor, someone wrote, "Where is the program? Connecticut's restrictive medical marijuana program is a failure. We have yet to see one patient receive state-authorized marijuana. We are still far from anyone receiving a license to grow and distribute marijuana. The state proudly proclaimed that this would be the most restrictive medical marijuana program in the nation, yet if we are to judge the program by its success in achieving the goals of distributing medicine, it's a cruel and abject failure that is keeping sick people from the medicine they need. If we were to require that all cancer patients that need opioid-based medicine to meet the same restrictive requirement that are mandated for medical marijuana, we would be considered cruelly indifferent to their suffering. The state's restrictive policies have resulted in a cruel deception to the sick and disabled patients who require marijuana." Henry Noble Danbury. So it sounds like Connecticut's not doing too well, that they're messing with it to a great degree, like they are in New Jersey and Arizona. Delaware also has a program. What do we got? The last posting was July 3rd. Marijuana as medicine needs research. Rules to drive by. Let's start by stating that driving while impaired. Okay. So they're talking about the driving while stoned. Medical marijuana caught in a standoff. May 20th. Federal objections delay state's program. So it looks like Delaware hasn't implemented due to federal interference. They don't even have a program at all, really. Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii has a couple of changes to theirs. Illinois just coming on board. Maryland, Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a medical marijuana program. I think they're trying to get medical marijuana for kids. That's their fight right now. In addition to just getting the program implemented at all. Michigan has a program. Missouri has 2 cities that have programs. Montana has a program. Technically, they've taken a lot of lumps. About 75% of the people got kicked out in the last round of nonsense. We were able to avoid here. Nevada is getting dispensaries. New Hampshire is getting added as a program. We shall see if that actually goes through. New Jersey. Right now, the governor for New Jersey, Christie, is getting pressed to okay medical pot for children. Other than that, they're messing with it. It's not really being allowed to implement, and so forth. Folks can find out more about medical cannabis around the nation by visiting our website. You can also see more about medical cannabis around the world at mercycenters.org. Also, come on down to our center at 1745 Capitol Street Northeast. We're open Monday through Friday, noon to 6, You can grab an Oregon Cannabis Connection or one of the Mercy newsletters or one of the Willamette Valley Normal newsletters, which has links to this information and more. You can also come down to our Wednesday night meeting. Happens weekly, every week, excluding holidays or special events, I suppose. It's here at 7 p.m. Come on down. It's open to the public. There's no fee to attend. Coming up this weekend, we have the Mercy Ultimate Louisiana Party. It's happening at the Bear Creek Saloon in Scio. That's on Sunday, July the 28th. Hopefully folks will see this show before that. If not, we do it every year, so stay tuned to find out more about that and other events like upcoming Hemp Fest and funny things. Yeah.
You forgot about a Friday night phone-in show, if you have any questions.
That's right. If you're watching us here on Channel 23, then you want to tune back in every Friday at 7 p.m. and catch our live call-in show, and then call in yourself with your medical cannabis-related question, comment, curse, or kudo.
Or be a guest at the studio.
Sure, come on down. Mercy is filmed at 575 Trade Street at Capital Community City TV, and you can be in our guest audience there. So check out the station on Friday 7 p.m. or catch us on Channel 23, or just call on in. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what's important to you, what you're finding out, or if you've already got the answers, how did you come to it? Share it with folks there. Save a life or two. What the heck? Any other questions, comments, curses, kudos? We got about a few minutes left here on my clock.
I have nothing to ask or...
New Mexico, another state. Most vets don't need pot to cope. Veteran
That's
battles
like-
for pot policy.
That's like the Senator Olson saying that they just need a bottle of whiskey.
MDC officer loses job over medical marijuana. Oh, the stories Augustine Stanley could tell. Awful, harrowing stories from his nearly year-long deployment in 2004 to Iraq as an Army Reserve convoy security specialist for the 644th Transportation Company. Awful, harrowing stories from his 13 years as a correction officer at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Albuquerque. He doesn't pick the easy jobs, but the story Stanley tells these days is how his experience with the former indirectly affected the latter and how it all went up in smoke, which is a pretty awful, harrowing story itself. Stanley, the 32-year-old son of former Bernalillo County Sheriff Captain and Gallup Police Chief Sylvester Stanley, is a sturdy, stoic man who speaks and acts in a measured, mannered way. He was barely out of high school when he began his career as an MDC correction officer in 1999. In 2006, after returning from serving his country, he was promoted to sergeant. A year later, he made lieutenant. He served in the jail's SWAT-like Corrections Emergency Response and Tactical Team and a security threat group which diffuses street and prison gang activity. His record is unblemished, he said, though an MDC spokeswoman would not comment on that. Stanley talks reluctantly about Iraq, nearly being blown to bits by a rocket-propelled grenade 4 hours after landing in the country, finding what was left of a young soldier from his platoon who was not as lucky. The explosion ripped into pieces, he said. He was this young kid and they were taking out body parts in bags. His wife Antonia saw what those experiences did to her, Augie. I've known him since high school and he never even raised his voice, he said, but after he came back he was changed. He talked about hurting himself. Once he smashed his fist into a truck window and broke it. Augie, she said, had panic attacks at stores and at family gatherings. Crowds, noises were too much for him. Only working at MDC at a job that he loved, the job he knew, could he control the suffocating wave of what was later diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder. That diagnosis came in January 2011, and with it came the medications: Xanax for anxiety, Ambien for insomnia, citalopram for depression. He hated them all. They just knocked me out. We come into a wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
About a year later, another MDC officer recommended what had worked for his PTSD, medical marijuana. And yes, other MDC officers use medical marijuana but haven't been drug tested. The journal reported last month that PTSD is the most common diagnosis used to qualify for the medical marijuana program, about 42% of all medical marijuana users. Many of them are military veterans like Stanley, and many report about medical marijuana being better at treating PTSD symptoms than the typical opioid, narcotics, and prescription drugs. Find out more at mercycenters.org, or come on down to our weekly meeting here at 1745 Capitol Street Northeast, or give us a call at 503-363-4588, or check us out at our Friday night live call-in show, 7 p.m. here on Channel 23. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Oh, yeah, don't forget about our event. We're happening. Check it out on the website, mercycenters.org. This and other fun events. Toodles, we'll see you next time on
Thank
Mercy
you all.
TV.
Okay. You want to say anything before I turn it off, Glenn?
Yes, good night.
Good night. God bless you all, every single one of you.